I always believed my husband Leo and I had a solid relationship. One of those that could weather the passage of time and life storms where trust flowed like air and respect was simply assumed. No daily promises needed. We shared routines, big decisions, and even the comfortable silences of the weekend. There were never jealous outbursts or suspicious glances. We were the kind of couple others envied for our apparent harmony. I thought I knew every corner of his soul, every gesture, and every pause in his breathing. But stability, as I would later learn, does not always mean truth. Leo was a creature of habit, and I found solace in his predictability. His morning routine was a sacred ritual. The 6:15 a.m. alarm silenced with a single practice swipe, the gentle creak of the floorboards as he made his way to the shower, the rich, earthy aroma of his single-origin coffee beans grinding at 6:45 sharp. He'd leave for his architectural firm with a kiss on my forehead, his briefcase in one hand, a travel mug in the other, smelling of soap, coffee, and the faint, familiar scent of his sandalwood cologne. I was Lilaa, a curator at the city's botanical garden. My world was one of chlorophyll, damp soil, and the silent, persistent unfurling of life. I found a parallel between my work and my marriage. Both required patience, a nurturing touch, and the faith that, with the right care, something beautiful would grow. The crack in this carefully cultivated world appeared on a Tuesday. It was an ordinary Tuesday, indistinguishable from 100 others. Leo had left for work and I was tidying up our bedroom. As I was putting away a sweater, my elbow caught the edge of his nightstand, and the drawer, which was never fully closed, slid open with a jarring rattle. I went to push it shut when a flash of color caught my eye. Tucked beneath a stack of old passports and charging cables was a small velvet box, a deep royal blue. My heart did a little foolish skip. Our anniversary wasn't for months. My birthday had just passed. Perhaps this was a spontaneous gift, a token of the love I still believed was the bedrock of our lives. With a smile playing on my lips, I opened the box. Nestled inside wasn't the necklace or pair of earrings I'd half expected. It was a cufflink, a single exquisite platinum cufflink, engraved with an intricate pattern that resembled a stylized A. It was beautiful, masculine, and utterly, completely alien. We didn't own anything like it. Leo's taste ran to simple modern silver. This was old world, opulent, and the initial not L, not E. The comfortable silence of the house suddenly felt heavy, oppressive. I stood there, the cold metal of the cufflink biting into my palm. 1,000 explanations, all of them innocent, rushed through my mind. A gift for a colleague? A lost and found item from a business trip? A memento from his father he'd never shown me? But the box was new. The velvet was plush and unmarked by time. And why hide it? I placed it back exactly as I had found it, my hands trembling slightly. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, my mind a whirlwind of doubt and denial. When Leo came home that evening, I studied him with a new, painful intensity. He was the same Leo. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, helped our daughter Chloe with her math homework. But now I saw the things I'd previously dismissed. The way his phone was always face down on the table, the new passcode he'd recently set, the occasional late nights that were becoming less occasional. "Tough day at the office?" I asked during dinner, my voice carefully neutral. "The usual," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just a lot of deadlines piling up. Might have to work through the weekend again." He'd said the same thing the previous weekend. I had believed him then. Now, the words felt like stones dropped into the still pond of our life, sending out ripples of deception. The following week was a masterclass in quiet observation. I became an anthropologist in my own home, studying the subject I thought I knew best. I noticed the subtle shifts in his scent. The sandalwood cologne was sometimes layered with something else, something lighter and more floral. A woman's perfume that clung to his collar. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a restaurant I'd never heard of, an intimate-looking French bistro across town. Dated for a night he'd told me he was working late with his partner, Mark. I decided to verify. On a Thursday, he'd earmarked for another late night. I drove downtown and parked across the street from his office building. At 7:30 p.m., I saw him emerge. But he wasn't with Mark. He was with a woman. She was tall and willowy, with a cascade of auburn hair. Even from a distance, I could see the easy familiarity between them. He held the door of his car open for her, his hand resting on the small of her back for a moment too long. A gesture that was once reserved for me. I followed them, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. They didn't go to a bar or another restaurant. They drove to an upscale apartment building in a neighborhood known for its young, affluent residents. I watched them disappear inside together, and I felt something inside me shatter. The foundation I'd built my life upon wasn't just cracked. It had crumbled to dust. The drive home was a blur of hot, silent tears. The house was dark and empty. Chloe was at a sleepover. I poured a glass of wine I didn't drink and sat in the same living room where we'd chosen our sofa, where we'd celebrated Christmases, where we'd dreamed of our future. Now every memory felt tainted. Rage began to simmer beneath the grief, a cold, clear fury. I wasn't going to be the hysterical wife. I wasn't going to scream and cry and give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. If he had chosen to play a deceitful game, I would play a better one. I would be the architect of my own revenge, silent and precise. The A cufflink was my first clue. The perfume was my second. It was a distinctive scent, jasmine and orange blossom with a base of amber. It was expensive. I started frequenting the high-end department stores downtown, visiting every perfume counter until I found it. It was called Amara. The name felt like a slap. Amara. So close to my own, Ilara. Was that part of the thrill? The sales assistant, a young woman with kind eyes, mentioned it was a very popular scent. "It's our bestseller," she said. "Especially with a certain clientele. We actually have a waiting list for the perfumed body lotion." The body lotion. The idea struck me with the force of a physical blow. It was perfect, insidious. A poison that wouldn't maim, but would mock. A punishment that fit the crime. I went to a different store across town and bought 2 large bottles of the Amara perfumed body lotion. At home, I locked myself in the bathroom. With the methodical focus of a scientist, I began my work. I had access to the garden's extensive collection of flora, including a section dedicated to plants with interesting properties. Under the guise of a research project, I acquired a small, discreet amount of Daphne mesoreum, the February Daphne. Every part of that beautiful, fragrant plant is poisonous, but its sap contains mesorine, a potent irritant that causes severe blistering and dermatitis upon contact with skin. Using protective gloves, I carefully mixed the clear, viscous sap with the thick, fragrant body lotion. I stirred it for a long time, ensuring it was perfectly, homogeneously blended. The lotion still smelled of jasmine and orange blossom, a sweet, alluring mask for the torment it now contained. I poured the tainted mixture back into the original bottles, sealing them perfectly. They looked pristine. The next part was the delivery. I needed to get it to her without any connection to me. I discovered her name through a combination of sly questions to Leo about his colleagues and a deep dive into his firm's website. Anya Petrova. The L made sense now. She was a recent hire, a brilliant young architect from Moscow. Her picture on the website showed a woman with a confident, almost challenging smile. I packaged one of the bottles in an elegant gift box, along with a handwritten note on a generic, high-quality card. In a script that was not my own, I wrote, "A little something to remember me by. Until next time." I had it delivered by a courier service to her office, paid for in cash. The trap was set. Life at home became a surreal performance. I was the lead actress in a play called The Happy Marriage, and I gave the performance of my life. I was warmer, more attentive. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his work with genuine-sounding interest, all while watching him lie to my face with effortless ease. The fury inside me was a cold, hard diamond, giving me a clarity I'd never known. I was no longer his betrayed wife. I was a strategist waiting for her plan to unfold. It took 3 days. I was pruning the orchids in the greenhouse when my phone buzzed. It was Leo. His voice was tight, strained. "Lilaa, I have to go out of town. A last-minute client emergency in Chicago. I'm heading to the airport now. A client emergency. The oldest trick in the book." "Of course," I said, my voice dripping with wifely concern. "Is everything okay? You sound stressed. It's just a lot. I'll call you when I land." He hung up abruptly. I knew there was no client in Chicago. I opened the Find My Friends app on my phone, a tool we'd set up for safety, which he'd clearly forgotten about. The little pulsing dot that was Leo was not heading for the airport. It was stationary at the city's most exclusive hospital, located in the downtown core. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. The poison had done its work. I didn't hear from him for 2 days. When he finally returned home, he looked haggard. There was a pallor to his skin, and he moved stiffly, carefully. "Rough trip?" he asked, handing him a cup of coffee. "You have no idea," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. He was wearing a high-collared shirt, despite the warm weather. I could see the edge of an angry red rash peeking out above the fabric on his neck. It was a nightmare. The client was impossible. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my voice the picture of sympathy. "You look like you could use some rest." The following week, the gossip began to trickle in. A friend of a friend who worked at the hospital mentioned a bizarre case of a high-profile couple admitted with severe full-body contact dermatitis. The rumor mill at Leo's firm was churning. Whispers of a passionate affair gone wrong slithered through the corporate hallways. The story was too salacious to contain. The esteemed Leo and the beautiful Anya, both hospitalized after a romantic rendezvous, their secret laid bare by a violent, embarrassing physical reaction. Leo's carefully constructed world began to implode. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He'd jump when his phone rang. The easy confidence that had always defined him was gone, replaced by a shifty, nervous energy. He knew he was the laughingstock of his firm, but he had no idea how the betrayal had been exposed. One evening, I decided it was time to stop performing. The charade was exhausting. I waited until Chloe was asleep. We were in the living room, him pretending to read a report, me simply watching him. "How's Anya?" I asked, my voice quiet and flat. The color drained from his face. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock and fear. "What? Who?" "Anya, your colleague. The one with the allergy to perfumed lotion." The silence that followed was deafening. It was the sound of his entire house of cards collapsing. He stared at me, and I saw the dawning, horrifying comprehension in his eyes. He knew that I knew, and he knew that I had been the one behind it all. "Lilaa," he began, his voice a broken whisper. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. My voice was steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I don't want to hear about how it just happened or how you didn't mean to hurt me. I know everything. I've known for weeks." I laid it all out for him, my tone clinical, detached. The cufflink, the perfume, the French bistro, the apartment building, the tainted lotion. I was the curator of this exhibition of his betrayal, and I presented the evidence with flawless, devastating precision. He broke down then, sobbing into his hands. He confessed to a 6-month affair. He said he felt trapped, that he was going through a midlife crisis, that Anya made him feel seen. His words were a cliché, and they hollowed me out even more. The man I loved was not just a cheat. He was unoriginal. "It's over," I said, standing up. "I want you to leave, now," he begged. He pleaded. He promised to go to counseling, to end it with Anya, to do anything to save our marriage. But the diamond of my rage had not softened. It had only grown harder, more impenetrable. There was nothing left to save. The trust was not just broken. It had been systematically pulverized. "The marriage is over, Leo," I repeated. "All that's left is the paperwork." The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal, for him. My cold, methodical collection of evidence made his position untenable. He didn't fight me on the custody of Chloe or the division of assets. He was too humiliated, too broken. He moved out, and the house that was once filled with our shared life became an echo chamber of my grief and newfound solitude. The first few months were the hardest. The silence was no longer comfortable. It was a vast, empty expanse. I had to explain to our 10-year-old daughter that Mommy and Daddy wouldn't be living together anymore. Seeing the confusion and hurt in her eyes was a pain far worse than any betrayal. I held her while she cried, my own tears falling silently into her hair, and I promised her that we would be okay. I had to be strong for her. I threw myself into my work. The botanical garden became my sanctuary. I started a new project, a scent and memory garden, focusing on fragrant plants that evoked specific emotions and recollections. It was my way of reclaiming the sense of smell, which had been so weaponized against me. It was through this project that I met Ben. He was a landscape historian hired as a consultant. He was quiet, thoughtful, with eyes that held a deep, settled kind of sadness. We started working together, and a slow, easy friendship developed. We didn't talk about our pasts at first. We talked about soil composition, the migratory patterns of pollinators, the history of rose cultivation. One rainy afternoon, trapped in the greenhouse by a sudden downpour, we shared our stories. He told me about his wife who had passed away from cancer 2 years prior. He spoke of her with a love that was still vivid, a grief that was no longer raw but had become a part of him. And I told him about Leo, the betrayal, the revenge, the divorce. I told him things I hadn't told anyone else. He listened, not with pity, but with a profound understanding. "You built something new from the ruins," he said softly. "That takes a strength most people don't have." With Ben, I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to be the brave divorcee or the vengeful wife. I could just be Lilaa, a woman who loved plants, who was a devoted mother, who was slowly, carefully, learning to trust again. Our friendship deepened with the turning of the seasons. It was a slow, gentle unfurling, like one of the orchids I tended. There was no dramatic declaration, no sweeping romance. It was built on shared cups of tea, long walks through the garden, and a mutual respect for the scars we both carried. One evening, as we were closing up the greenhouse, he turned to me. "Lilaa," he said, his voice quiet. "I know I can't replace what you lost, and I wouldn't want to, but what we have, it feels real. It feels like a second chance I never thought I'd get." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness or rage. They were tears of healing. I took his hand. "It does," I whispered. "For me too." We didn't move in together right away. We took our time. We introduced our children to each other slowly, carefully. We built a new life, not on the shaky ground of passion or the brittle facade of perfection, but on the solid bedrock of honesty, shared loss, and hard-won peace. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I heard through the grapevine that Leo and Anya had not survived the scandal. Their relationship, born in secrecy and exposed in humiliation, could not withstand the harsh light of day. They had both been let go from their prestigious firm and had moved separately to different cities. I felt a faint pang of something. Not regret, perhaps a distant cousin of pity. But it quickly passed. They were chapters in a book I had closed. One Saturday, Ben and I were working in the new scent and memory garden. Chloe and his son were playing nearby. The air was filled with the smell of lavender, rosemary, and the rich, dark scent of wet earth. Ben looked at me and smiled, a simple, contented smile that reached his eyes. I looked around at the life I had rebuilt. It was different from the one I had before. It was quieter, perhaps, and the colors were more muted, but it was authentic. It was mine. The scent of betrayal had once poisoned my world, but from that poison I had cultivated a new kind of resilience, a quieter, more durable happiness. I had been broken, but I had chosen to rebuild myself, not with bitterness, but with the gentle, persistent strength of a growing thing, always reaching for the light. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.